Diego Cordovez. Welcome to The Scoop. We're going to wrap things up with Matt Glantz. He's one of the best mixed game players in the world, very successful in cash games, but he also has over $4 million in tournament winnings. He's reached the final table at the 50K tournament at the World Series twice. And we're going to talk today about cash games specifically. He told us some good stories about no-limit tournaments and cash mixed game tournaments, but this is really his strength, and we're going to talk to him. If you missed the first two parts, they're on Card Player TV. You talked about your poker instincts really carrying you as you built up in the mixed games. I mean, you've been around for a while playing, but obviously you ascended pretty much to the top in terms of playing the biggest mixed games around and being a big winner in those games. Was it really a matter of using your instincts and then just your experience giving you more and more tools, or did you ever systematically work on each of the games? Because I think a lot of people are intimidated by the fact that if you're going to become a mixed game player, you've got 8-10 games that you really need to learn, because if you're weak in any of them, that vulnerability is really going to hurt you. And how do you, where do you start is probably what people think. In your case, how did you become adept? And by adept, I mean not just strong in the games, but tightening up all your leaks in all the games, right, so you don't have a hole in your game.
Truthfully, I've never felt like I was the best at any one game, any discipline of poker.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if I played at a table with 8 of the best players in any one game, I'd be a big dog. And 8 of the best players in the world,
right,
in any one game, I'd be a dog. But I feel like if we're playing a 12-game mix,
mm-hmm, and
I'm playing against the top players in the world, I'm going to do fine, because I'm going to find spots, I'm going to find leaks in the other players' games in certain games. I don't
mm-hmm
think I'm better or worse in any one game than any others. I think I'm just decent, but I just...
So how did you acquire those, that level of proficiency?
For me, it's really just poker instincts. I was never one to really study. The No Limit's really the first game I ever really studied.
Mm-hmm.
I never studied any other games. I probably should have. I probably would have been more successful than I am in poker if I did that at the beginning. It would have been a faster process, but that's not really the way I've learned. That's never the way I learned in school and college,
right,
and grad school. That for me, trial and error kind of way is the best way to go. Watching that really good players play and seeing what they're doing and then analyzing what they're doing,
mm-hmm,
is always what
from the beginning, you jumped into the game and observed the players who were winning and who were doing well, and then tried to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, one smart thing I always did was when they added a new game, when I would come out to the West Coast for the World Series and they would add a new game like Badoogie, I'd never heard of before,
right,
just a couple of years ago, or Badusi, or these kind of games. I would play in the game, but I would just play super nitty. I would play super tight and watch the game played. I would be in the game. I wouldn't sit down in the games.
Right.
So I'd pay my blinds, but I'd just play the nuts. And, I'd be giving up a little equity by doing that, but I learned the games that way.
I talked to Ben Land, who said pretty much the same thing, which is he started playing, he jumped into big games, but he played them extremely tight at first and watched the players, and then gradually began to kind of, put his toe in the water and be more aggressive and try some plays. And obviously it's a good method if you have the inherent poker skills. Otherwise,
Ben's a great example because he probably has the best poker instincts of any kid in poker.
Yeah,
he's phenomenal, and he's going to be getting better and better every year. But he's a great guy, sort of like me, who's not known for his fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
He's never going to be known. That's not the way he operates.
Right.
He's just going to be He's always going to have an edge on the field because of his poker instincts. So he's going to do really well over the long run.
There are a lot of guys now jumping into these mixed games. There's all the obvious reasons, which is that cash no limit, is a tough thing. We've already seen games becoming much, much, much tougher. Weaker players are driven out at a very accelerated pace. Mixed games are more sustainable,
yeah,
more fun, and now with the internet poker opportunities so diminished, I see down at Aria, Bellagio, a lot of these tournament stars or internet stars now are playing mixed games at all levels. What do you think are actually kind of the biggest weaknesses that you see, or leaks that they may not even, a lot of these newer players who are obviously talented poker players may not even be aware of, but that really is handicapping them in these games?
The biggest problem I see some of the newer guys have is they feel like they're really good at one game. So say guys are real specialists at limit hold'em,
Right.
So what I see happening is when the limit hold'em round comes around, they're playing too many hands of limit hold'em because they feel like they're such a
Trying
favor
to
of the field,
compensate.
and they know that limit hold'em's not going to come around for another hour and a half because of all the other games of the mix.
Right.
So they force themselves to play games in more hands in the game that they feel confident in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big problem. And there's the common problem of when guys are losing playing 30 hours straight because they're stuck trying to get even, and when they're winning they hit and run and they're leaving after 2 hours. And
That's a fundamental problem in all poker.
But that's a big thing for mixed games. Really, the guys that feel confident in all the games have a big advantage, because in these big mixed games, the truth is you're not really trying to outplay other players. Or at least this is not my philosophy. I'm not trying to be better than the other good players in any one game.
Right.
I'm just trying to play all the games at a level where I'm not making any mistakes.
And exploiting weaknesses in others.
Exploiting people that make mistakes in certain games. So that's how I make money off poker, is by other people's mistakes. It's not by me playing so over the top.
It's a good insight also that you mentioned, which is that if you're not confident in certain games and more confident in others, you're actually, even if you don't realize it, going to be forcing the action in the ones that you aren't confident in, and maybe not being confident enough in the others, because even if you're not a great player, I mean, if you're in the right situation, then you need to take advantage, even if it's not your best game. If you sense somebody's weak or you sense somebody's out of line, you have to proceed strongly.
Yes, sure.
One thing that's interesting is that the big mixed games have always been kind of this almost secret society, I feel. People who play those games are probably more reluctant to talk about the dynamics of the game. I know people talk to me about it privately a lot of times. Well, this guy's really overrated. He's, or this is kind of the key to these games. But there really is kind of a shroud of mystery about games that I would say 300, 600 or above, which is where the really top players are playing. Now, it's obvious when there's some non-professional who just dives in, but a lot of times, if you walk outside Bobby's room or the high limit room at Aria, you see 6 or 8 players, and every one of them is, recognized as a top player, famous player. So, in this case, is it that even these top players are just tilting at times, or playing too long, like you say, or they have a blind spot in that they're so adept at certain games that they have a blind spot about how they have a fundamental flaw in other games? Are these factors that play into it? Or when I see you with 7 other very capable, skilled guys, what's going on?
Well, I know, when you look into Bobby's room and you see a table full of known players, every player in there to themselves thinks that they're a favorite in the game and really believes it.
Right. And they're winners overall for the most part in poker.
Obviously, not everyone can be a winner in every game, but everyone feels like they're a winner. So that's the beauty of poker. There's no way to really tell objectively. So everyone's got a subjective opinion about themselves. Everyone feels like they're a winner probably in every game they're playing. There are games that I sit out of just because the field's too tough. It's not often, but it happens.
There's some players who I suppose will just never sit out, right?
Well, there's certain players that feel
they
like
just feel
they're the
confident
best.
that there's no reason to ever sit out,
right?
Which is kind of amazing coming from you, because you've got a long track record of success.
I would love to say I think I'm a favorite in every field in every game, but it's not true, and I don't feel like that. So sometimes I'll just won't play, or I'll take a break. I'm not there to give away money. I'm not there for entertainment. That's my job.
Ego.
That's my job. I do enjoy playing poker when I'm there. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to enjoy it if I feel like I'm losing per hour in the game. So I'm going to stay away. But there are a lot of top poker players that will do that. But there's also a large amount that will play in any game whenever there's a game available.
Right. I was reading your blog, and so you've been very open about your results, your focus. Clearly your focus has been, as we talked about, so much on no limit that you haven't put the same number of hours in the mixed games or focus as much. This year, it was interesting that you wrote that you're actually losing for the year. We're almost done with the year as we're shooting this, so probably will be a losing year in the mixed games. Obviously, you've done, when you make the final table of 50K and other tournaments, then it's been a profitable year for you in poker. But in the mixed games, which is your bailiwick, you actually are in the red overall, which
Right,
is amazing to me.
I'm positive for the year with all my poker put together, tournaments
Yeah,
and
of
cash,
course.
but I'm negative for the year for the first time ever in live
Right.
cash games.
And not only, I mean, and I know this is true just over the years, not just for the first time ever that you've been a loser in cash games, but you've been a big winner. We're not talking about like a marginal winner. You've been very
Yeah.
successful in the
I've
next
had
games.
losing months, and it goes up and down. It's poker. You run good, you run bad. But I've definitely had a good career.
Hmm.
But this year, um, it's funny. I was having the first 6 months. I had a pretty good year in the cash games, but since the World Series, I've done very poorly in the cash games, and I know a lot of it has to do with me concentrating so much on no limit. Not
Mhm.
because I got worse at the mixed games.
Hmm.
It's just because the way it's transferred the way I'm thinking about hands, and
Really.
it's really affected me in a negative way for the limit games.
So it's not just a matter of being distracted, but actually making plays where afterwards you feel you made the incredible
Yeah,
play.
certainly making less optimal plays than I've made in the past, and that's going to be my goal to correct it over the next year.
Bringing some no limit principles to the mixed games,
Yeah.
to the limit games.
It's really effective. It's so weird because I've gotten so much better. I went from here to here, no limit, and then in the mixed games, I went from here to here at the same time, and it's directly related. There's no question in my mind.
So it's just a matter of compartmentalizing your poker brain,
Yeah.
right? When you sit down in the mixed games to be
Yeah.
reoriented towards
And
more of a limit philosophy.
I don't feel like it's one or the other. I don't feel like anybody else would have had the same effect as I had. It's just whatever the way my brain works. It's just like you said, it's hard to keep it separate,
Right.
and
And
you
you-
have to work on that.
Can you give an example of like a particular hand, even if it's a made-up hand, but just where the way that you've always played or that you would play it now somehow was distorted because of a new approach? It's a tough question, but
Think of a specific. I mean, it's
or a hand that you construct where a no limit philosophy really changes how you approach it.
I mean, I can give you an example. I don't know of a specific example that actually happens,
Yeah.
but an example of a hand that might happen where it's just like in limit hold'em, where I've been playing for years. It's just fire, fire, fire.
Sure.
If I raise with ace queen and I get called by one of the blinds and the flop comes queen 5-4, I'm going to fire. Almost always going to fire 3 streets no matter what comes out. But in no limit, when that same flop comes out and you have ace queen, there's going to be a lot of reasons to check the turn. There's going to be a lot, depending on what comes in the turn.
Of course.
Because you're going to lose value. You're not going to get 3 streets of value for one.
If you get a lot of action, you're probably beat in no limit with that type of hand,
Right.
top pair hand.
Right, and if you get a lot of action in limit hold'em on the queen 5-4 board on the turn, you might not be beaten. Even if you are, it's still correct.
Right.
To keep firing away. It's just 2 different games. So in limit hold'em, you can't miss bets.
Mhm.
In no limit hold'em, if you miss a bet every once in a while, it's not the biggest deal. You're not going to get always maximized value of each hand. But in limit hold'em, it's all about maximizing value. You can't miss
every
any
bet
bets.
counts. Yeah.
Every bet you miss is the same as every bet that you make a bad call with. It's no different about missing a bet with the best hand. So there's a lot of situations where it would just be automatic fire, 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 and limit hold'em. And now I have this no limit mentality where I might check back sometimes where it's spots where it's just an easy bet, and it just something triggers in my mind saying that.
Or miss a value bet on the end, possibly.
Yeah, there's a lot of spots where it's just confusing to me, and it's frustrating,
Yeah.
and I know it right after I do it. So, I'm just going to try to correct it and do better.
Do you ever find yourself where a big part of no limit is that you do have the tools to get people off of big hands and to lay down the best hand? In limit, it's a lot harder, and there may be spots, but for the most part, you're trying to extract value, thin value bets, correct laydowns, and so forth. Do you find yourself in some games trying to outplay people more than you did in the past, where that really is a losing strategy? Because especially in games with board cards and so forth, if without the right setup, it's very hard to get people to lay down. Whereas once in no limit, you get into a mode where you start running people over or getting people to make even huge laydowns.
It's a lot easier to manipulate your opponent's decisions in no limit for sure. So you really can't manipulate your opponent's decisions in limit games. Really, you just want to maximize value when you can and lose the least amount of bets when you're behind. But you're really just counting on your opponents to make mistakes, like missing bets, like I've been doing lately, missing a lot of bets. And as long as they're going to make more mistakes than you, you'll do fine. In no limit, you really just have so many options. It's just such a endless decision tree that you can really get them to do what you want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Even the top players.
You could also, it seems to me like a no limit, you can make a mistake even early on in the hand, and then of course make up for it later on. You might not play the flop optimally, and then somehow you get, a big call or a big laydown if that's what you want on the river. In limit games, if you make a mistake on the flop or on third street or on fourth, you can't really make it up. That's one bet that's been lost, or a hand that you've that you've messed up, and every mistake just comes back to be tallied. And no matter how brilliantly you play on the river, you can't make up for the bet that you lost, or the bad call that you made earlier, or whatever it is.
That's true. I mean, I can give you an example of the hand that we played last week in the Bellagio main event, where I feel the way I played the hand, it kind of forced the guy, kind of needled the guy or instigated the guy into doing something really stupid. So it's the last hand of the night of day one at the Bellagio 10K. Average stack was probably like 70,000. I have 140,000. My opponent has 300,000. He's the chip leader in the tournament. Eric Baldwin and Antonio Esprandari were at the table watching this hand in amazement. It's the last hand of the night. We're getting bagged up, ready to go.
Always an interesting time.
So they were watching for 10 minutes in just amazement what was going on. So I opened under the gun +1 with ace king of spades.
For your 2x?
For my 2x, which is, I'm going to guess, was 3,200. I think we were playing 816. So I made a 3,200, 140,000 deep effective.
Mm-hmm.
A guy I've never seen before. I just got moved to the table at the end of the night with 5 hands to go, so I didn't have any information. But the guy was chip leader, and he looked to be maybe about 40 years old and was either European or South American.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell he had some kind of accent.
Right.
So anyway, so that's all the information I have on him. He 3-bets me big from the small blind to 13-5.
From the small blind.
Yep, and this is the last hand of the night. So I don't really know if this guy just wants to take it down. He's already chip leader for the tournament. Does he just want to take it down here? Is he messing around? I'm not really sure, but I wouldn't always 4-bet in this spot, but for some reason it felt like the right spot at the end of the night.
Mm-hmm.
It was less likely he wanted to play a big pot and not be chip leader for the night.
One would think.
And I have a lot of value with ace king of spades. I would be thrilled getting it in here with. I had 140,000. We're playing 816, so 80 or 90 blinds. I certainly wouldn't be thrilled getting in ace king of spades for that many blinds. But I 4-bet the sort of small to 28-5, and he flats, which I expect him to do a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
With a big range of his hands.
Even out of position.
Even out of position. But I thought there was a good chance he'd fold. I thought I had fold equity, so so I 4-bet there. So we got 28-5 each in the pot, plus the antes in the blind. Flop. The pot's about 61,000, 62,000.
You've got more than 100 still behind.
Right. I have 115 behind.
Yeah.
And the flop comes ace 7-6 with 1 spade. Good flop for me.
Yeah.
The pot's 61,000. He leads 10,000 into me. Okay, so
right.
All right. So I have no information on this guy, but just by him leading 10,000 into a $61,000 pot, right there, it's clear to me the guy doesn't know what he's doing. There's just no hand that you could have there that makes sense to lead 10,000. You wouldn't see any top player leading 10,000 there unless they have a specific reason. And I just couldn't give this guy enough credit to have his. You
don't think it could be a super advanced play with a set where he's trying to induce?
It's always possible, but I'll take the more likely scenario where he's just doesn't know what he's doing. So when he bets there 10,000,
mm-hmm.
I really think he's trying to see a cheap term with like a 2-outer. Like I think he might have like 5s, 8s, 9s.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The came ace 6, 7. He's a backdoor straight draw, and he just wants to see a turn.
Right.
So I see. So he bets 10,000. So now I'm looking at it. I could bomb the flop and really raise it up here, and I'm going to lose him. I'm going to lose any value because there's just nothing he could have.
Right.
But I said, you know what? I'll try to let him spaz. So I raised 14,000.
Mm-hmm.
which is like a super small raise.
Right. And might look weak to him.
It just, yeah, he might think that I have two queens, and he might think all of a sudden, oh well, he's got two queens and there's an ace on the flop. If I three bet here on the flop, he's got to fold.
Yeah.
So he flatted the 14,000, which I thought was kind of strange.
Mm-hmm.
But it just there's just no hand he could have that makes any sense here already, and we're only on the flop. So he calls the 14,000. The turn comes the queen of spades. So now I have a spade draw.
Mm-hmm.
I have 90,000 left, and he checks. I think about it for a while. I'm saying that I just can't even put the guy on a hand. There's just nothing. I don't know what he has.
Yep.
I just think he has a pair in the hole. He's trying to hit a two-outer. So I bet 35,000 into a pot of 110,000 and I only have 55 behind.
Right, which he has to interpret as you being pot committed, whether you really are.
You
or
would
not.
think
That's the interpretation he should come to.
You would think, but based on that he didn't know what he was doing, and the fact that I raised him 14,000 on the flop, I think really confused him. And I was trying to get him to spaz, and so to my amazement, to Antonio's amazement, to Eric Baldwin's amazement, he thinks for 10 minutes and decides to check shove on the turn. So he shoves. He says, "I'm all in."
And for 10 minutes, like a long
Yeah, for 10
tank.
minutes. So it's not like he has the nuts, and it's Hollywooding. He knows I have to call. I only have 55,000
Right.
left.
And 10 minutes is excessive even by Hollywooding standards, not necessary.
Right. It was a long time. It was the end of the night. Everyone wanted to bag up. So he moves in for another 55,000, my 55,000, and I call, and he turns over two tens. And the board's ace, 7-6 queen, and he has two tens and just totally spazzed out. And
As bizarre as a hand as you could have.
And yeah, the point being is, like, you just have to find ways in certain spots to get a guy to spaz, and this is what happened, where the guy just leads 10,000 on the flop, and you would think, you want to put a healthy raise in there. You don't want the guy to catch a two out,
right.
But you have to be willing to risk those spots, and kind of, I don't know, this was like a needle raise, 14,000 on the flop, where he's just, kind of pissed off because now he has to call into 14 to try to hit a two outer.
And he looks ridiculous if he folds.
That's true too. That might have gone through his head. And now when he gets to the turn, he just doesn't want. Now he's so curious. He's saying, "What does this guy have? If he had an ace, he would have raised me big or something." So now he's so curious that he just put in the other 90,000 on the turn, drawing to two outs. He actually did have two outs because he had the 10 of spades in his hand. So the 10 is. So I couldn't hit a flush if he had a 10. So he had a good two queen outs, and it went in, and that
Incredible.
propelled me to a big stack.
What was his reaction to all this?
He was just like, nice hand, and he was nice about it. But I think he was visibly upset with himself.
This actually confirms my theory. When I see someone who's a chip leader in the tournament early, I assume that they're just some nut.
If you don't know them, right?
How do they get all those chips so quickly? They must be making bizarre plays or getting lucky.
Right.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have, a huge stack.
Right.
Well, that's a good story to end on. Good luck. I know you're in the tournament now, and I'm sure it'll be a huge year for you again, and we'll see you at the World Series and a lot of the tournaments.
Hope so.
No Limit and Mixed Game. You started a website recently, which I went to, which I know is going to have a lot of good content as well. So people are becoming more aware of what you're doing, and not only are you a really good player, but you explain concepts really well, and you articulate things about poker that other people either don't or can't that well.
Right.
So I think people will be more and more interested in what you have to say.
And I'm also writing the monthly card player article for Mixed Game Strategies now, the questions and answers, and we'll also have that on my website and the card player website every month.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming in. It's
Always
been
a pleasure, Diego.
All right, good seeing you, Matt.
Thanks a lot.
Take care. Thanks for joining us on The Scoop.